the concave Earth theory. So let's jump into this presentation. Ahem, ahem, ahem. Okay, so um, let me have a sip. Wet the whistle. All right. Oh, shoot. I forgot this thing moves on its own. Because it's fancy. Alrighty, here we go. This hypothesis was first conceptualized in the cellular cosmology of Cyrus R. Teed, founder of the Christian Religion Society, established in 1886. He stated that the Earth is concave, curving upward. Thus, we are on the inside of a hollow sphere. All the stars and planets are illusions due to refraction of curving light in the atmosphere, of which itself is illusionary in the general appearance of its shape. Only one half of the sun radiates light. It rotates on an axis at the center of the hollow cell, and we only ever see a focalized projection of it through multiple layers of the atmosphere. According to this cosmology, was revealed to Ted during a visionary experience in which a female angel showed him the true nature of the cosmos, where the heavens revolve inside the hollow cell of the earth. And above, I believe, is the title of his book. Yeah. Cellular cosmology. And then this on the bottom is a diagram of cellular cosmology. So I think now there's a lot there to digest. And I briefly skimmed through it, but one thing I think is funny, right, is how he's talking about how the all the stars and planets are illusions due to refraction of the curving light in the atmosphere, of which itself is illusory in the general appearance of its shape. So here's something I think is kind of interesting about that, right? So if that's the case, then like, how would you explain shooting stars or comets? Because I've seen comets before. A couple of months ago, I saw one burn up in the atmosphere. So then, what are those? So I would push back a little bit, because I know that there, when it comes to the whole concave Earth theory, and he's talking about, it's that the atmosphere is an illusion. Then it kind of ties into the whole Van radiation belt, and like, can we actually get past the Van radiation belt? There's all these interesting videos of like of rockets hitting something, and even, man, I wish I just thought about this, but shout out to Dave at Generation Z. He was recently, I think he was on the Tinfoil Hat podcast, and he talked about an explorer or a researcher who took a hot air balloon And he claimed in his findings in his journals that he hit something all the way at the top. So, with the whole kind of concave Earth theory and the hollow Earth is like, okay, well then, it ties into the whole ice wall. That there's like this giant wall all around our entire domain of Earth, of where we exist. Think of it kind of like if you've ever seen The Truman Show. And spoiler alert, because it's a Jim Carrey movie. And it's an old one. It's an old film, but it's, even though it's a spoiler, honestly, it's still worth the watch for the psychological aspect of it. Because I'll be honest with you, you'll completely forget about the spoiler once you get into the film. So essentially, like, he gets into this boat to try. He starts realizing that the world that he's in is like, it's like not real. Something's not right about it. So he tries to escape, and they keep on trying to sabotage his chances of finding out the reality. So eventually, he takes a boat, and they. This is what's funny though. They end up turning on the weather to make a storm, to make it impossible for him to reach the other side. And he reaches the other side, and it ends up being a wall. And the wall is painted to kind of look like the far distant off, blue sky and blue ocean, when he was just like, a couple miles off the shore. It's fascinating, but it kind of ties into that kind of whole idea of us being in, almost like an illusion. Now keep in mind, remember, we're just having fun. These are interesting ideas to, discuss and talk about, even if there is, some interesting evidence behind it. And I'll show you some interesting stuff. Whether or not you believe it doesn't really matter. It's just cool stuff. It's just interesting to talk about. So, and I don't know. That's interesting to me. So, next slide. Inversion geometry. In 1981, Mustafa Abdelkader, an Egyptian mathematician from Alexandria, reviewed and expanded upon Carl E. Newport's Cosmos revision of Cyrus ideas from the year 1900. Unlike Cyrus's model, which considered the heavenly bodies entirely as optical illusions, Newport's model inverts the entire known cosmos into a concave model, stating that space shrinks, implodes via look at this one, Euclidean geometry, so as to fit an entire Copernican cosmos. I'm sorry if I'm chopping up these words terribly. A Copernican cosmos into the comparatively finite boundary envelope of geocosmos, concave surface. In this paper, submitted to the Australian Science Journal, Speculations in Science and Technology in 1981, which then gave a serious peer review of his full hypothesis in its 6th-volume edition in 1983. Abdelkar says, the enormous galaxies and other remote objects are mapped inside a microscopic objects and our moon as by far the largest of the celestial objects, all of which revolve daily around the Earth's axis. Straight rays of light are mapped as arcs of circle, so that all celestial phenomenon appear to inside observers in G just as they do outside observers in C. We next consider the hypothesis conversely our actual universe is this finite G. This idea entails the inversion of all known geoastrophysics. Okay, so this is the okay, actually we'll get back to that because they talk about that. So the main addition to Newpert's concept with Abdelkadar's address is that the light is eventually pulled toward the center of the cosmos, which shrinks inward. The arcs of light which travel toward the surface of the earth are absorbed, and those that are not continue traveling toward the center of the cosmos as well as around it to the opposite side of the heavens than the sun. However, they never illuminate to the other side of the earth, its night sky, because the wavelengths of light flow in accordance with the volume of space beyond the earth's surface, and are also subject to black hole-like inertia of the cosmos' infinitesimal center. Thus, as a coverage toward the opposite position of the heavens to where the sun is, they are simultaneously pulled toward the center. Therefore, the light which circles round to the opposite side of the heavens never meets the sight of those who have the center of the cosmos between them and the sun. Therefore, an observer on the surface will experience night without a luminous sky, even though rays of light are actually traversing the space they look out into. This being because the rays are only in space and thus are never received directly into the eye. For those FS formula explorers who are limited in English terminology, geology is the study of the shape of the earth and its properties, and in some sense its relation to the rest of the cosmos. Hence the name Geocosmos, as the model in the earth is the boundary of the cosmos. Okay, so that's Abdel Kadar's concave earth. Interesting. Okay. Okay. Interesting. So I know you can't see my scroller, but I'm sure you guys can see the little fella in Italy. You see Mario. If you see the little fella in Italy, so what he is saying is that from what my brain was able to translate is that everything is pulled towards the earth. So it almost seems like the way I'm interpreting it is that he's saying that the earth is the center, or no, he's saying that everything is pulling towards the center of the cosmos. And so what we're seeing is everything being pulled towards the center of the cosmos. That's how I'm interpreting. Or he's saying that what's that say on the top? Experimental increase of the distance. So hold on. I forgot. There's a little bottom part here we can read. Abdel Kadar devised an equation that suggests the phenomenon belonging to the perception of the sky dome and horizon line. Okay, all right. And subject to optical illusion, supporting his statement that light bends in wide arcs through space, rather than traveling in straight paths. As such, when we believe we are looking at a luminous astrological object perpendicular to our line of sight, what we are seeing actually lies on the other end of a bent ray of light. Thus, one's line of sight is really pointing at nothing, and their eyes are receiving an image of something that is at a position in the sky elsewhere to the direction they are truly looking. This arcing nature of light, therefore, would attribute illusion of the perception of the phenomenon in the sky and space. However, it is not just the light alone that produces this illusion, but also the magnetic field of Earth and gravity, which causes the light to behave extraordinarily. Double refraction and ray focalization of light was the explanation Teed offered for the sky dome illusion. Ted's model, however, theorized a stationary sun, with which he attributed the bizarre notion that it were really a focalized point of light emanating from a rotating luminous double helix at the center of the cosmos. Whoa. Abdelkader's model, on the other hand, requires more elaboration as it entertains an orbiting sun rather than a stationary sun. Yeah, his model is a little bit more elaborate and a little more too elaborate for my taste at times. But I kind of get, like, it's kind of interesting because whether you look at it as the sun being stationary, or you look at it as that, the sun is a rotating luminous double helix at the center of the cosmos. You look at a lot of the similarities and a lot of the symbolisms with the double helix, and I can't spell right now. Double helix. Oh, wait, hold on. Is that what it said? The double helix? A rotating luminous double helix at the center of the cosmos. Okay, so the double helix, that's kind of like the DNA. I think most people you can visualize like the classic DNA strand that's spinning. So I think he's saying that that the sun is. That's why when I was reading it, I'm like, okay, this is very sciencey, but like, hold on, please, someone translate it a little bit for me. That's an interesting idea. I'm a very visualizing type of person, so I like to kind of visualize what I'm, talking about or what I'm reading. So I'm trying to visualize a rotating luminous double helix sun. And I guess if that was at the center of the cosmos, right, then what we're seeing, if we're looking at the sun, would be, in my mind, the bottom part of this double helix. That's just how I would envision it. Let me get a picture up of a double helix. But that's just how like my brain would interpret it. That's a simple, good enough photo. Don't need anything too wild. Okay. Where am I going? Here we are. Okay. So you should see the double helix. There. Okay. So the way, if you see the helix up in the on the screen right now on your screen, the way I'm interpreting it is that if you look at the bottom part of the helix, I'm assuming that is what we, as observers of the sun, are seeing. We're not seeing the long part. We're not seeing the wide part of if it was a luminous double helix. I like that, luminous double helix. If that is what we were witnessing, I would speculate that we were witnessing the bottom part of that helix. But I don't know. I've never. It's hard for my brain to conceptualize that. And I'm sure there are other people who can relate. And that's kind of a weird concept to conceptualize, especially if you're a visualized person like myself. I can't conceptualize that, but I think I'll humor it. I think it's interesting. But I do not think I could conceptualize something like that. It's a little too much for me, for my taste personally. But I do find it interesting. All right, here we go. Next part. The mechanics of gravity, levity, Earth's EMF, electromagnetic field, and the propagation of light. To fully comprehend the theory of how light behaves in the geocosmos. So, a little recap. We're talking about the geocosmos theory and their perception of the world and light and gravity, and how it correlates to, excuse me. Okay, and we're back. And how the geocosmos theory correlates to the concave hollow earth theory, how they took both ideas and essentially put them together. So, okay, to fully comprehend the theory of how light behaves in the geocosmos, one must entertain the notion that the Earth's magnetic field and gravity are really opposite polarities of the same unified force. As above, so below. I'm just adding that in. But that correlates to the whole as above, so below. This force compounds itself through the envelope of the geocosm, i.e. the spherical area around the outside of the geocosmos within the crust. In other words, gravity, or centripetal force as Teed believed it to be, radiates out from the center of the cosmos through the Earth's concave crust, where it then compresses inside of the concave Earth's outer boundary, enveloped below the crust. Then, due to it being continuously flowing force, it therefore flows back outward to the surface at double the frequency as it has compressed against itself, and becomes the Earth's Levick electromagnetic field, EMF. How this concept of gravity levity is relevant to the behavior of light in the geocosmos is that as the light reaches its resonance threshold of the EMF, it becomes compressed. Slow down with the fraction, causing an inverted compression of its wavelength within ratio of the Earth's EMF. A way to help visualize this, thank you, could really use some help with this, is to take an example of a blown up rubber glove. And on one and how one can push the glove's fingers into the inside of the blown up glove, provided the air pressure isn't too high. Okay, I see what he's saying. However, this analogy is only outlining the path of light in its reality, in its constant flow from both the sun, moon, planets, stars, and other astrological phenomenon. This means that because one sees what's on the other end of the arcing rays of light, and that the path is also folding back on itself against the Earth's EMF, then focalizing back down toward the Earth before our eyes receive it. The optical information that our eyes receive of the EMF threshold light resonance layer is therefore reversed, similar to how the reflection of a spoon is upside down and slightly distorted depending on the angle one views it from. This accounts for unexplained phenomenon dubbed the moon illusion, of why objects in the sky look larger on the horizon than they do directly overhead. It also explains why one instead sees the sky dome horizon line as a concave dome illusion rather than a convexly implied display of concentric atmosphere void as one would expect it to appear. Thus, when one sees sun across below the horizon, what it would actually be doing is moving up and around into the zone of the SP's influence, where the circular paths of light progressively get pulled into the SP, and hence day becomes night. Abdelkader emphatically points out that both his and Einstein's concepts of properties of light are assumptions, as no one has proven either. Well, you may have to look into that in the future. The optical illusion of the Earth ball in space. Okay, let's hear this. This is where we hear some very, very interesting information that I find that I actually no, I didn't bring it to my mom's friend, but I did say to him, because we then briefly kind of touched light on NASA, and I was explaining to him, I was like, Werner von Braun, the dude, one, was a Nazi and, ran NASA. And he was like, he didn't run NASA. And he's like, man, look it up, man. And he's like, well, he was head of operations and he ran the Apollo program. I was like, that's running NASA. That's what NASA did, bro. Not trying to be like I'm right or anything, because, either way, the dude was a Nazi. He ran, Hitler's rocket program. He did kill, Werner von Braun did kill Jews. He did have a scar on the side of his face from these fencing duels.
him and his other, Nazi crew would be doing. It's wild, man. It's wild. But that's a whole nother story. Operation Paperclip. But the reason why I really am excited about this page in particular is is mainly because of a couple things Warner von Braun says um, that tie into other things. So, real quick, um, listen, I'm as I get older, I'm more open minded, and that doesn't mean that I believe everything. It's more the sense that like I will humor ideas and concepts and just see, okay, where is this going? What does this mean? What's the angle? That's essentially what I mean by um, when I do that. Because when I'm talking about this, doesn't necessarily mean that I believe all this. I've never even heard of geocosmos until last night at like 3 o'clock in the morning, or this morning, I should say. So I'm not one to be like, oh, I know about this stuff. I don't. I just think it's interesting. But what I'm trying to get at is that um, Warner von Braun, one thing I thought was kind of funny when I was talking to my mom's friend was how like I brought up like, we got to take in consideration his ties to the occult, or what about the Nazi bell, and he was kind of humoring my talk, and I at the end of the night I told him thanks, humoring my wild side, but we can't act as if it truly has been all sorted out. One thing I was kind of bringing up to him was like, you know, when I brought up about the moon landing being staged, it's like if I brought up like, have you ever seen the movie Wag the Dog? And he's like, well, no, but I know what it's about. And it's like, okay, so like, what makes you think that if our government, well, actually, no, I brought up the Gulf of Tonkin incident that which sparked Vietnam War, and I was like, if our government was willing to lie about that, what makes you think they wouldn't lie about other things? I mean, look what that did. That started a war. All right, that started a war, and that I'm not gonna get all geopolitical right now, but it did start a war. Um, and I think that is something that's really we have to think about is like, what makes you think that we can trust anything, if they're gonna lie about something crazy like that, what makes you think they can't lie about landing on the moon? But I don't know. I just think we gotta look at things from all different angles, be open minded about things, and do your own research. I'm not saying any of this is right. Like I said, I've never heard of geocosmos, although I do find it really interesting, and I might look a little bit more into it because I think it's kind of cool. Never heard of it. And that's kind of the whole point of this is that we're just, we're having interesting conversations and we're just humoring these concepts and ideas. And I'm just providing my thoughts and speculations on them. So, back to this concave Earth slideshow that I put a lot of work into, as you can see. The optical illusion of the Earth ball in space. Alrighty. In October 1983 issue of Omni magazine inquired with HMS Coxter, a math professor of the University of Toronto, as to whether or not there was any way to prove we aren't living inside a hollow Earth. Coxter responded saying he couldn't think of any he couldn't think of any. And being an expert on any inversion uh, geometry, went on to say a rocket flight, an eclipse, a Foucault pendulum, a Coriolis effect, any observation we make on the outside of the Earth has an exact duplicate version inside. There would be no way to tell which was the truth. The article continued to relay, just as geometry of space inverts, so do all laws of physics. Toward center of a hollow earth, light slows down and everything shrinks. Atoms, astronauts, spaceships, and measuring rods. Light travels in circular paths, producing some weird but lawful optical effects. Astronauts on the moon looked back on what they thought was a blue sphere in the distance. Actually, it was inside the Earth's shell, seen through sight lines that flared like the bell of a trumpet, producing the illusion of a sphere. The optical distortion is something like the a wide angle view through a fisheye lens. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. The German NASA astronaut, Nazi, and physicist Werner von Braun, let's not forget, speaks of this convex spherical illusion of our planet in the inner outer space of the concave Earth in one of his papers regarding optical illusions in space. He explains the process by which a photograph of the Earth ball, convex Earth, occurs, a potentially illusionary perception of which our arbitrary physical senses have led us to believe. Okay? So that is the head of NASA. Or, NASA's, spokesperson, their celebrity, their mascot. Even he's saying that us living on a ball is an illusion. So, and even he has claimed that, it'd be impossible to get through the Van radiation belt. So, being open-minded as we are, we have to kind of think about, well, what does that mean? What are the possibilities that entails? And, why is it then that, you have, Werner von Braun in one of his papers saying that the photograph of the Earth ball is an illusion? It's like, okay, then what does that mean? What are we supposed to interpret from that? And I'm genuinely curious what people might think about that, because he was someone that was instrumental in our space program. He was also very instrumental in Hitler's space program. But if he is gonna so casually put in one of his papers that, yeah, it's an illusion, us being on a ball, I mean, okay, what then? How are we as just average people? How are we supposed to perceive that? We're being told, big old Neil deGrasse Tyson tells us, oh, we live on a planet, we live on a sphere. And then if you were to go and pull up Werner von Braun's paper, he'd be telling you, no, that's not true. And it ties into the whole hollow earth um, theory and what that could mean and what that could represent. Sorry, I got a little distracted. But regardless, I just think it's something that we should all just take a second and be like, huh, what does that mean? What does that represent? Because I'm not saying that we really truly, I don't really know. Like I said, I think that there is an interesting idea to the hollow earth theory. I think the concave earth theory is cool, but this just takes it to a whole nother level that I was very unprepared for. Oh, but I think it's just so cool. And I just think it's cool because it's like I said, the veil keeps on getting lifted, and these interesting ideas and concepts are just getting thrown out there, and then every now and then someone pulls out a book or some redacted papers from the CIA, and it's or emails from Hillary Clinton talking about you know the gravesite of Gilgamesh. It's like, wait, what? Why is she talking about and asking about the gravesite of Gilgamesh? You're like, and you hear me, and you're like, Ronan, what are you talking about? Go look it up. It's for real. You got to ask yourself these kind of questions, like, what's really going on? That in a future live stream, I'm going to talk about giants and how the Smithsonian has admitted to hiding, suppressing, and destroying giant bones that it has found throughout North America and the United States. So, if they're willing in the Smithsonian, which is relegated by the government, if they're willing to destroy archaeological evidence that would go against the narrative, I mean, what makes you think that they wouldn't be so willing to suppress or hide the idea that we don't live on a round planet? Or it's just you have to start questioning things, and I mean questioning things within reason, and using a level of critical thinking skills, and looking up things for yourself and being like, huh, that's interesting. What does this mean? Like this whole geocosmos, that's really interesting. I want to look up more about that. Like, is there anyone else talking about this? Like, what is it? Like, we have some idea about it, but like, I'm kind of curious more about it because I've never heard of that. And I think that's what's kind of fun about, you know, looking into these kind of things, is you learn about new concepts and ideas, and maybe you might look into it and be like, okay, this is clearly full of doo doo. But hey, it was an interesting little journey to get there. And that's what I'm all about. So we kind of touched a little bit on the whole concept of the concave Earth theory.